Good day, family and friends. Hope you're all well. My name is Desire Pepe, aka Ngwakwa. Today, I like to talk, about independence. And as you know, a lot of countries, have obtained, independence, from their oppressors, and colonizers, with such, I would like to throw light more, on independence, holistically, as you know it, independence, it's a hard thing to deal with, than oppression or enslavement. Independence, breeds, responsibility, and with a lot of, these nations, we have obtained independence, some of them, they are struggling, with independence. As I've, dispersed, a certain, fellow speaking, he was in South African, you once mentioned that, oh, how I wish, apartheid could come back. Apartheid was better, than these days, and, I found that, humorous, but, in fact, he had a point, to some a certain extent, and, yes, and as it were, and of course, as you see it, we also with, in, Christianity, God, the Bible says He has brought us, liberty. He has brought us into liberty, and without liberty, God, said, as long as you are in these bounds, you are at liberty. But if you trespass, as the Bible also says, that whoever breaks the hedge, the serpent will bite. So God, said, within these bounds, yourself, you are at liberty. But if you break the hedge, the serpent will bite. It's just like that. In fact, freedom is enjoyable. When there are some restraints, like laws, that are put in place. Yeah, you best experience freedom, when there are laws, when there are bounds. Without bounds, we are not at liberty. As you know it, the enemy has to be kept, at bay, as it were, and that's it. I wanted to throw a little bit of the light on you. Otherwise, say, God bless you, family. Goodbye.